Welcome to Rick on Life, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. I'm Rick Emmerton, and this is where we talk about how to impact your life and the lives of others. We have a fantastic guest today, Kevin Knebl. Kevin is a certified mastermind executive coach, an international speaker, author, trainer, whose clients include individuals and small and medium and Fortune 500 companies. He's an in-demand leading authority on social selling and relationship marketing on LinkedIn and Twitter. Kevin is the co-author of the Social Media Sales Revolution, the new rules for finding customers, building relationships, and closing more sales through online marketing. Kevin is the most recommended business speaker in the world among over 281,000 speakers worldwide, and he is the CEO of Kevin Knebl Communications. Kevin, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Rick. It's an honor to be here. It's nice to chat with you.
Listen, I know you got a new watch. Have you figured out how to use it yet?
Not really. I think it smells colors. I think it realigns planets. So for years, I was a normal, Rolex, Breitling, Citizen kind of, masculine metal power watch guy.
Yeah.
And so I just made the jump over to an Apple Watch now, and I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, when you posted about it, I had a little bit of a chuckle. I thought, yeah, these things are sometimes very complicated. The technology, it's so warm. Kevin, you're a fantastic business person, and we'll talk a little bit about business in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But the real reason I wanted to have you on the program today is because you have one of the purest happy vibes I've ever seen.
Well, you need to get out a little more.
Yeah. With, besides your obvious good looks, what makes Kevin so happy?
Well, oh my God. I've got a LensCrafters coupon if you want to use it. Okay. So I don't know about the good looks part. I've got a face for radio. That's what I always say. So, what makes me so happy? Well, that's a pretty big question. Let me try to give a fast answer to that. I was born and raised in New Jersey, moved to Colorado 13 years ago in the Witness Relocation Program. And I deeply understand, as they say in New Jersey, that any day you wake up without a chalk line around your body's a good day. So the reason I'm happy is because I live a pretty grateful life. I live a life of gratitude. I don't take a lot for granted. And I give thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, you have to share with us the story of how you were booked to play piano at a wedding and ended up marrying the girl that you were going to play piano for.
That's true. That's true. So what I used to do for a living many years ago was I used to be a piano player in New York City and in the surrounding area. And I got asked to play piano at a wedding by a beautiful woman. She never ended up marrying that guy. She married me. But it sounds like I stole her at the altar, but I didn't. But the technical answer, if you said to me, Kevin, how did you meet your wife? The real truthful answer is I met my wife when she booked me to play piano at her wedding to another man. And then through a chain of events, they decided the wedding was still 16 months away. So there was plenty of time in there for things to go wrong, which thankfully they did. And so when she called me back a couple of months later and said, by the way, I really don't need you to play at my wedding anymore because we decided to cancel it. We called it off. Obviously, at that point, I knew she was single, right? So sure. I saw my window of opportunity and jumped on it like a pit bull on a mailman. So that's the fast version. I could bore you with an hour-long version, but that's the fast version. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's an incredible story, and I love when I first heard it. Before I heard the fuller explanation, I thought, man, that had to be one heck of a song that you played. You know? Got her just to turn around going down the aisle and thought, no, I want the piano player over here.
Back to the, and we'll just take that back to the LensCrafters, comment. So that obviously did not happen. No.
Kevin, do you have any routines, morning rituals, things that help you stay in the groove?
Yeah, I do. I get up every morning at 4 a.m. Not because I'm a morning person. I could sleep till the crack of noon if I had the chance.
Really?
But I've developed the habit over many, many years that I pretty much every day I get up at about 4 a.m. Some days I get up a little earlier because I'm kindly asked to speak in about one city per week all around the world.
Right.
On any particular day, I could be in San Francisco, like where you are. I could be in South America. I could be in Australia. I could be in London. I could be in Iowa, So some mornings I have to catch early flights. Some mornings I catch a 5:30 or a 6 a.m. flight. And maybe on those mornings I might get up at 3. But I typically get up at 4. From about 4 to about 4:45 is kind of what I would call my spiritual time. So it's when I'm doing the things that I do spiritually in terms of reading and things like that. So that's a good way to start my day. Then typically from about 4:45 till about 5:15, I have some simple routines that I do in business to stay in contact with people that are asking about working with me or clients or things like that. Then at about 5:15, 5:30, I take about 20 minutes and I do my social media posting. So I post some content on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. So I play on 5 platforms. So I do some posting on there. And that takes me up till about, I don't know, where am I at now? About 6 a.m. So at about 6 a.m., I put on a pot of coffee and drink the whole thing. And then usually, I speak in about one city per week around the world, but the days that I'm not speaking, I'm working with my private coaching clients.
Uh-huh.
And usually my first private coaching client is at 7 a.m. It's usually an East Coast client. So it's 9 o'clock on the East Coast. It's 7 o'clock in Colorado. And then, so tell me if I'm answering this too much. I'll just say one more thing. On the days that I'm not on the road, I typically work with private coaching clients and I schedule them at 7, 9, 11, 1, and 3. So my first coaching client is usually at 7 a.m. Mountain Time in Colorado, and it's usually an East Coast client, which is 9 a.m. East Coast time. So that's kind of high level my morning routine.
Well, I read an article recently about the things that successful people do before most other people even get up.
Yes.
And I think this helps, to outline for people who are pressing into projects and dreams and things that they want to accomplish. And they may miss the connection of that time in the morning that's so important for us as individuals. I'm an early riser myself. Right. And what I can do between, 4 and 6 is amazing, sometimes. And it really does prepare you, for the day.
Yeah.
And when you really want to achieve something, I think it just helps. If you have a routine, you stick to that routine, you take care of yourself first, you get yourself, in the groove.
Yes.
And so I think it's great, especially with all of the, turmoil that just seems to be swirling around all of us, right now. It's saying everywhere you look, you got some stuff going on, people are unhappy. And Kevin, you mentioned faith. What role does faith really play in your life?
So I'm going to say a couple things that may sound woo-woo, but that's okay.
Sure.
Everybody is a spiritual being, but many people forget that.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't forget it. So for me, my spiritual life, and we can go way deep down this rabbit hole, my spiritual life is the most important part of my life.
Sure.
But I have no interest whatsoever in proselytizing or evangelizing for any type of religion or thought or belief system. I find that when I live my day in a sincere, authentic connection with spirit, creator, God, love, whatever you want to call it, when I live my day with a conscious awareness that I am love in human form, my day tends to work out better.
Sure.
Doesn't mean I don't get kicked in the teeth by life. Doesn't mean that I don't have crap in my life like everybody else does. But the more that I can remember that I'm a beautiful thought in the mind of God, things just have a natural way of kind of working out a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love your post, and I don't think there's a day hardly that goes by that I don't, share something, that.
And thank you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. But I mean, it's because it's so, we talked about this before. Wisdom is simple.
Yes.
And we complicate everything. And, the love factor, I mean, it's very strange. I don't mean as in weird, but as in different, to have someone who is such a compelling personality in the business arena talk so much about love and love in work and in business and in life and how it, it all flows together. And you generally don't see that. Most corporations are driven by less virtuous factors than that.
Right.
And you create such a foundation in everything you do, everything we hear you talking about, everything that you connect, through social media or whatever. There's always that, and I think that's why you have such a great happy vibe. You stay in the groove. And so, I mean, I really like it. So, our politics have gotten a little crazy. Mm-hmm. Certainly an ugly time for us here in our country.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anger out there.
Yeah.
And I think it shows up in our private lives. I think it then, of course, shows up in our relationships. It shows up in business.
Yes.
When you're dealing with folks and mentoring them along, this anger factor that shows up so often, how do you address that? What are your thoughts about that?
I could talk about that for a long time. So I'm going to make a comment or two, Rick, which if you want me to expand on it, you tell me.
Sure.
Because I'm quite aware that what I'm about to say could sound somewhat nebulous. Most people go through their entire lives without a very good understanding of how their mind works. And because they don't have an understanding of how mind and thought and consciousness work, they attribute a lot of their unhappiness and anger to outside factors that in reality have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with their internal state of happiness. Now, I just said a lot there.
Sure, you did.
A lot of my coaching, which I call joie de vivre coaching, which is a French term for love of life, joy of life, okay?
I'm really glad you pronounced that because I couldn't pronounce that term when I read it. I left it out of your intro because I thought, I don't know how to pronounce this.
People look on my website and they look at my newsletter and they go, what is this joie de vivre thing, right? So it's I probably picked the wrong name, but who cares, right? But really a lot of what I help people do is understand how mind, thought, consciousness works. And the natural byproduct of that is a natural joie de vivre or a joy of life. Okay.
Yes.
So a lot of the time that I spend with my clients is helping them understand how the system works. And when I say the system, I mean them. Because if we don't fundamentally understand how mind, thought, and consciousness works, that's going to manifest itself in a lot of ways in people's lives with a lot of unnecessary stress. Can I say one more thing on that?
Absolutely.
So, like the political situation, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Let's just call it what it is. It's nuts, right? It's nuts. It could really appear that Hillary this or Donald that or whatever is causing stress in us. It could also appear that the traffic is causing stress, or it could appear that our financial situation is causing stress. And what I'm saying, and again, we could go down this rabbit hole for hours, is that all of that is an innocent misunderstanding of where our moment-to-moment experience of life is actually coming from.
Yeah.
And what I've spent a lot of time learning and researching and understanding is really how our minds work. And I'm not talking about positive psychology. I'm not talking about spinning, looking for the silver lining. I'm talking about a deep understanding of the principles behind how the mind works. So it kind of goes back to the first thing you asked me, which is, Kevin, how can you be, so happy most of the time? Well, the true reason why I'm happy most of the time is because I understand where my experience of life comes from.
Break that down just a little bit more for somebody who, there is so much pop psychology out there. There's, I had a comical moment in the bookstore the other day because I was trying to count the books whose titles had steps in them. 7 steps, 3 steps, 12 steps. I mean, you couldn't hardly count the books that were written with these formulas. Do this, do this, do this.
Yes.
And so many times they don't translate into reality. Yeah. And people get very, very frustrated. They don't know what to do with the anger that they're feeling.
Yes.
And oftentimes it plays out in destructive ways, toward others, towards yourself.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this recently. I think anger is an invitation to make something better. But if we miss that, then we're gonna misdirect the message that's being sent to us. We don't need to burn buildings. We don't need to damage other people's properties. We just don't need to let this anger explode, which doesn't do anything. It's an invitation to be constructive and to build something. And so help us understand a little bit more about, the everyday person who may not have studied all that you have, and how can they grasp it?
Sure. And you're bringing up a really good point. The anger is an invitation to compassion.
Sure.
It's an invitation to everybody to compassion, but that doesn't mean that everybody understands that it's an invitation to compassion.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to answer your question. And again, we're getting into an area here where we could literally talk about this for not minutes, but days.
Yes, absolutely.
So let me just put a disclaimer in here. Some of the things that I'm about to say, do not be fooled by the simplicity of some of the things I'm saying.
Right.
Because the answer to what you're really asking me is extremely simple, but that's why it often eludes us, because we're making it more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm going to answer your question in a little bit of a different way. Remember back in the old days when they had tall sailing ships with masts on them and sailors, like a couple hundred years ago? At the top of each of those masts on those ships was a crow's nest. And they would put a man in that crow's nest. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Rick, why do you think they put a man in that crow's nest?
They wanted to see.
That's correct. Because it was the highest point.
Right.
What were they looking to see, Rick?
Dangers.
Okay.
Obstacles.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah. They could see the enemy at a distance. They could see land, but that's not really the reason why for thousands of years there was a crow's nest on top of the ship. Here's why. The reason why they put the crow's nest on the ship for literally thousands of years is because they believed the earth was flat. And what they were terrified of was falling off the edge of the earth.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it was a benefit that they could see the enemy at a distance. It was a benefit that they could see an island. But that's not the fundamental reason why they had a crow's nest. The reason why was because they were deathly afraid of falling off the edge of the earth. Now, follow me. Were they ever going to fall off the edge of the earth?
Yeah. No.
No.
Yeah.
But at the same time, was their fear real?
Sure. Paralyzing.
So their fear was based on a misunderstanding of the nature of the earth, because it was round. They were never going to fall off the edge of the earth. Okay. You and I chuckle about this because we're like, oh, that's kind of silly because the earth is round. But they didn't know that. So it was a misunderstanding of the principles of how the earth works, that it's a round body, right?
Sure.
Now, how does that tie into the answer to your question? Well, if you were to walk out on the street right now and say to somebody, how do you like Donald Trump being the president? And they're like, I hate Donald Trump, blah, 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 blah. They get all wound up. They are feeling stress. And they're feeling stress because they attribute that stress to Donald Trump being president. I'm going to say what I'm about to say next. I'm going to say it very slowly, not because neither you nor your listeners aren't smart. You're very smart. I'm going to say it slowly because I want you to hear it slowly. It is literally impossible for anything outside of your physical body to create an internal emotion. Now, that's a lot for most people to bite off because they will try to argue with me all day long.
Right.
First off, I don't argue, okay? So I will listen and have a conversation with somebody about that. But it is physically impossible for an external situation to create an internal feeling. So I'll say one more thing, and then you tell me if I'm getting too far down a rabbit hole. We live our lives from the moment we're born till the moment we die. We live our lives in a moment to moment to moment experience of feeling the clarity or lack of clarity of our thinking moment to moment. I'm not denying that being stuck in traffic isn't going to piss you off because you're going to be late for your appointment.
Right.
But what I'm saying is it is literal, and I'm being quite literal here.
Right.
There is no way on God's green earth that a traffic jam can create a negative emotion. The only thing that can do that is thought. So it's a misunderstanding of where our experience of life, what I'm calling feelings, almost everybody you come across every day is actually operating under a complete misunderstanding of where their experience of life is coming moment to moment to moment. And therefore, you made the comment before, people burn down buildings. I would burn down a building too if I was that person at their level of understanding. So nobody gets up in the morning and says, you know what? It's my goal today to make some really bad decisions, right? Nobody thinks that, right? People are functioning from their level of understanding of where their experience of life is coming from. This is a pretty big topic. But once you kind of understand it, man, does life get easier. Because then you're no longer in victim mode, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing, feeling victimized or feeling threatened, or it's that fear and it's what you're talking about is our reaction to these, to these experiences.
It is, and it's natural. It's very natural. Of course, the person that burned down. That's where the compassion comes in. Somebody walks into a school and kills a bunch of kids. It's a horrible thing. But in their mind, that was the logical thing to do based on where they were at. Okay. So it creates, I'm not saying that it isn't a horrible thing. Of course it's a horrible thing.
Sure.
But understand, when you see somebody that has that level of suffering, it creates compassion in you. Not because you're an enlightened Buddha, not because, oh, I'm better than him. It's just that when you see someone suffering, if you're fully functioning and rational yourself, that creates compassion. If you see someone suffering and you don't have compassion, I guess what I'm really saying is, if you don't have compassion for somebody that's suffering, you got your own issues.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really not as complicated as it's just all the high emotions. It's, based on the understanding that, you're alluding to. It's where they are. It's their own thought processes. And then, when you take millions of people, and everybody's feeling something, and they're at different levels of understanding. And here we are trying to make some progress and trying to, share the earth and share life and share one another. And there are so many stakes being driven into the ground that divide us and separate us and keep us from being, people with compassion and operating from, this feeling of love and happiness.
Yeah. Can I make one more comment on that?
Absolutely.
I'm going to use another metaphor or analogy to kind of point in the direction of what I'm pointing at. And this may help some of your viewers, or it may not. I don't know. Yeah. When we see a little baby that doesn't know how to walk yet, the reason why a baby or a toddler doesn't know how to walk isn't because they don't know how to walk. The reason they don't know how to walk is because they don't yet have an internal understanding of how gravity works. Follow me on this. When you see a toddler that's holding onto a table and it's walking along the table, but then it lets go of the table and it falls backwards, right? It's not because it doesn't understand how to walk. It's because it doesn't understand gravity. Because once we have an internal understanding of gravity, now we can walk. We can even run. We can ski. We could ride a bike. But it's not that you're such a good bike rider. It's that you have a deep internal understanding of how gravity works. So what I'm pointing to are principles. What you right now in Colorado, it's what? It's like 11 o'clock in the morning. So far today, I've probably used the principle of gravity 500 times already this morning, but I haven't thought about it once. Right. Because I have a deep internal understanding, an embodied understanding in my physical body that when I drop this pen, it's going to go down, right? I don't have to think about it. It's just the way gravity works. So until we understand principles behind the way that we're wired and the way that we work, everything can look very, very illusionary and mysterious, but it's just because we don't understand the principles behind it. So the toddler learns how to walk, but what's real, yes, physically they're putting one foot in front of the other. I get that. But what we're really doing is we're getting a deeper understanding of how gravity works in the moment, which converts or translates into the ability to walk. So how this relates to what we're talking about is until we understand how gravity works, we're not going to be able to walk, ride a bike, ski, because we don't understand how gravity works. Once we understand how it works, we don't have to think about it so much. We just know it. So I'm going to go back to the first thing you asked me. Kevin, why are you happy most of the time? Well, the reason I'm happy most of the time is because I understand gravity. I understand mental gravity. I understand how my mind works. I still get tricked. I just catch myself faster. Right?
Yeah, and that's great, Kevin. It's very practical. It's very usable. It's very identifiable. And yet I think we omit it so many times because it's the emotion that, we're letting fuel us.
Yeah.
Instead of capturing control, of how we work, and how we're designed, to work.
Can I make one quick comment on that?
Yeah.
Because I can be a little nitpicky with words. I'm going to substitute the word understanding for control. So let's seek to understand how things work, not control them. because when we understand how they work, we'll naturally use them in a way that's productive.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is in our world, of course, people who set out to deceive us, take advantage of us.
Yeah.
I mean, they're motivated by
A misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding, but we're experiencing
Yes.
abuse, and we're being lied to oftentimes. We don't get the information the way that it should be delivered to us. I mean, I don't like to think in terms of conspiracy, but there is efforts,
Sure.
that are out there to lead us in directions that are wrong. The information is wrong.
Yeah.
They're not giving us the information. They're really trying to harm us. And we face that. And so apply what we're talking about to dealing with that aspect of reality.
Well, it depends on whether you want to let it bounce off of you or if you want to address it. So I always say love people, but you're going to want to love a bunch of them from a distance.
Yeah.
So if I'm dealing with somebody that's got, pathological issues, I have to ask myself, do I really want to deal with this person? Okay. If it's not something that it's worth my, if I, there's a lot of ways I could say it. I major on the majors. I don't major on the minors. So me sitting around and talking about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, it is a complete and utter waste of my time.
Sure.
Because I have absolutely no real impact on that situation. Now, I'm not saying that people should take a laissez-faire, let's just kind of let, everything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I'm making the mental decision. If I come across somebody that's just a complete manipulative, lying scumbag, if I don't have to really interact with this person for any compelling reason, then I just don't. If I do have to interact with them, it's going to be pretty blunt, because I will call it out very quickly. I will not dance around the 900-pound elephant in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
Am I answering what you're asking?
Yeah. The only point I think I would like to magnify here a little bit is people who are in positions of authority, power, who do make decisions that we have to deal with. We
Yes.
have to deal with the consequences of decisions that are being made.
Absolutely.
And so what I'm trying to draw out of you is when we're experiencing that as a reality.
Yes.
What is the strategy for us? I mean, I know we're elaborating on it, but let's attach it specifically to that feeling.
So tell me if this isn't a good enough answer. We'll go deeper. Again, like most things that I say, it's going to be very simple.
Sure.
Control what you can control. The way I define stress is trying to control something that's literally out of your control. Okay? Now, you could try to poke a hole in that, but you would never be able to poke a hole in that. Because I don't care if you heard it from Wayne Dyer or Deepak Chopra or who you heard it from or Oprah. If you can control something, then control it. And there's no reason to have stress about it. If you can't control something, well, then just realize you can't control it, and then there's no reason to have stress about it, okay? So I guess what I'm really pointing to is getting clarity around what it is you can control, right? Because if you can't control a particular thing, being a victim of stress of that is literally insane. If you really take this to the level that I'm taking it. Because I have no control over what Donald Trump's having for breakfast tomorrow morning. I have no control over his breakfast.
Right.
Me sitting around and getting stressed out about Donald Trump's breakfast is insane. Okay. Now, somebody might chuckle at that, but if you really hear what I'm saying, the answer to your question is, if you and I are subject to the ripple effect of other people's decisions. That's absolutely true. At the same time, there's only so much we can control.
Right.
So to waste any mental effort trying to control something you have no control over makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Switching notes here just for a minute.
Sure.
I've thanked you privately for reading and endorsing my book.
It's a great book.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you publicly here. But in my own story and in the book, I allude to feeling this shame that was paralyzing, and even though I had made progress in many aspects of my life, there were places that I was very stuck, and I was very fortunate to work my way through that, find answers, overcome the dysfunction that was just really showing up in my life in really horrible ways. And but I kept moving forward. But a lot of people who are, as a coach, and most everybody is looking for a way to get unstuck, they're how to make the next step. And we've talked, about this the whole time we've been together this morning, but I want to really address the specific area of people who have maybe had failures or such extreme disappointments in their life, and they are just not able to move beyond these events. And it's affecting, their outlook. It's affecting their decisions, their relationships, their business opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so when someone comes to you, and we already know it's not as simple as ABC, take this step, take that step, although it is simple, but it's generally something to do, again, with what's going on inside. So when someone approaches you for some assistance to move beyond where they are, do you try to identify, these events or these things that have locked them up or made them immobile? How do you move them along?
Really good question. I would preface the answer by saying it depends on how much time I have with them. So if somebody came to me and said, Kevin, here's my situation, but you only have 10 minutes to address it.
Yeah. Might be
the way that I would address it would be quite different than if we got together maybe once a week or once every other week for an hour for a couple of months. It would just be different. Okay. So I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here over and over. In my experience, and again, you're just interviewing me today, so this is my experience. In my experience, most people, I'm not denying that maybe they had a business failure. I'm not denying that maybe they're struggling to get more clients, whatever that is. There's two sides to the coin. One side of the coin is the technical aspect of correcting the situation, right? Kevin, I need more clients. And tell me if this is a bad example. Okay, Kevin, I need more clients. Okay, there's a technical aspect to the answer to that question. How to attract clients, how to engage them, how to get more referrals. There's a technical side to that. But there's another side to it too, which is the way our mind works. Because if a person understands the technical aspects, but they still struggle with they innocently struggle with stuff over here, they're gonna have problems, right? So when I work with my clients, it's a little bit of both. It's the technical side of, Kevin, I know you were the top salesperson in the world for 4 different companies. And they think that I have some magical sales skills, right? Was there a technical reason why I was the top salesperson in the world for 4 different companies? Yeah, sure. I mean, I understand how to move the ball down the field, and I can sell. But I will absolutely tell your listeners that what made the biggest difference in me becoming very successful in that realm wasn't my sales skills. It was my understanding of how my mind worked. Okay. And again, this sounds very paradoxical to people until I go deeper down the rabbit hole. So am I going in the right direction, Rick?
Yes. Yeah. You're fine.
Okay. Did I answer what you wanted, or should I go deeper?
Yeah. I think, I think oftentimes people try to separate their personal life from their professional life.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a natural American cultural phenomenon.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, how our mind works and understanding, how we're wired, and recognizing that we aren't separate, and just because it's one activity from another activity, it's still us. And I found that even in my role as ministry, I think it was subtle in the way that it was taught to me and communicated to me. But there was this separation between my real life and this professional life or ministry life, what I was engaging in. Even when I was in the insurance business, there was this separation that I operated thinking that that's how it is.
Right.
And it wasn't.
By the way, you were in the crow's nest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so I just think it's helpful when we can help people understand that you're who you are all the time, wherever you are, and doing whatever it is that you're doing. And the more that you can become comfortable in that, I think the better we are at whatever it is that we're taking on, whatever challenge, whatever dream we're pursuing.
May I make a comment on that?
Sure, please.
Wouldn't it stand to reason that the more comfortable a person is with themselves, by extension, they would also be more comfortable with other people?
Yeah, absolutely.
That to me, that just seems very, very simple. The reason why most people struggle in interpersonal situations is because they're not at a deep enough level of being comfortable with themselves. And I'm not saying that they should poo-poo, things that are going on. I'm just saying that it just makes total sense that we can only be as comfortable with others to the extent that we are with ourselves. By definition, how could you possibly have compassion for another human being if you didn't have some of your own self-compassion for yourself?
Yeah, again, we complicate all of this stuff when it really is that simple, because one of the things that drove me was this deep sense of unworthiness.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to celebrate anybody else if you're feeling unworthy,
Mm-hmm.
Or shame, or all of the negative things that go with that. And so getting comfortable in that arena is understanding your value and who you are as a person. And you say it all the time, reminding us that we're love, and we come from love. We give love away. Love is who we are. And I think, if people could love themselves, then it's not hard to love other people. But so many people are not loving themselves.
Correct.
And so that becomes an issue in so many areas. Shows up in really all aspects of our lives.
How could it not? How could it not? Right.
So the issue really is simple. It's understanding our own value.
It's self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's understanding. And I don't know if you've picked up on it, but we've used the word understanding a lot of times in this conversation.
Right.
So when I talked about the baby that couldn't walk, it wasn't because they don't know how to walk. It's because they had a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of gravity. And then if we wind the clock back to earlier in this conversation, when I said that most human beings go their entire life with a misunderstanding of where their experience of life, i.e. feelings, where their experience of life, so it really comes back. It's very, very simple, as you're saying, Rick. The more we understand ourselves and how the world works, it's a natural extension that a lot of other things in our lives naturally self-correct. Let me give you one more example. We'll go back to the sailor in the crow's nest. That sailor in the crow's nest made decisions based on his understanding of the flatness or roundness of the earth. His decisions were entirely logical. If you thought the earth was flat, you would do the things that would because the earth is flat. Once the sailor understands, there's that word again, once the sailor understands that the earth is round, he naturally self-corrects in his decision-making processes. Once the baby understands that when you drop something, every time it goes down, you don't have to give them gravity lessons. They naturally self-correct in terms of maybe I should not walk off that cliff, right? So most humans don't understand how the mind or thought or consciousness works. So therefore, they make decisions and experience life differently than if they did understand the simple ways that life really works. And again, I'm not denying that bad people do bad things and innocent people get killed. I'm not denying that at all. But I tend to make broad statements quite often that sound very exaggerated. But every human being on this earth at this exact moment is living at the best they can in their understanding of how life works.
What motivates broadening your understanding? What's going to move a person to say, I'm not understanding something here. There's something I'm not getting. I'm not connecting the dots. Things aren't working the way I think that they should. I personally experienced that for a number of years. So how would you maybe explain or look at how a person could just broaden themselves, to broaden their understanding?
Well, I think that the answer is simple. Until they have a sincere desire to broaden their understanding, it doesn't matter how eloquent or philosophically you explain this crap.
Yeah.
Because it does, you could take, I often say it doesn't matter how good the teacher is if the student isn't ready to learn. So some of us go through life and we've got to really hit rock bottom before we wake up to what life's been trying to tell us all along, right?
Yeah. Sometimes bad things happen to wake us up to the good things we've been ignoring,
Well, sometimes I say it this way. Sometimes we have to bang our head against the wall so many times until our ears pop out and we hear what's really going on. I think the lucky people, the fortunate people, are the ones that don't have to bottom out first, right?
Right.
And they go, you know what? I think I'm functioning pretty well, but I think I could operate at a higher level. That's a blessed soul.
Yeah.
For me, that wasn't me. I had to hit rock bottom in certain areas of my life before I was ready to hear what the universe had actually been telling me all along.
And that was the thing for me. That was one of the eye-opening moments in my own story, was looking back and seeing how many times I was missing
innocently,
but missing the simplicity of guidance and direction and understanding and all the things.
And we all do it. We all do it in
Yep.
different and various ways. We all do it.
Well, Kevin, take a minute and what in parting words here, what would you want to say to us, advice you would give us or leave us with a message that we can think about for a while?
Well, thanks for asking that. For the viewers watching this conversation was 1,000% unscripted. So I have no idea, what Rick is about to ask me, and I had no agenda getting on this call other than I knew we were going to have a conversation and it was going to go wherever it should go.
Right.
So to answer your question, if there was anything I could leave with people, it would be cut yourself some slack. You're more than likely, you listening to me right now, you right there, not Rick, but you listening to me, whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now on YouTube or whatever, more than likely, you're probably doing the best you can right now in whatever situation you're in. So cut yourself some slack. Realize that if you could be doing better, you would be. Okay? So number one, cut yourself a little bit of slack and just realize that it's not all as serious as we often make it out to be. Okay? I would encourage you to find people, either that you know personally or maybe in the public sphere, that appear to have some understanding of how to live a joyful, happy life, and study them. Because success leaves clues, okay? Anything we want to get better at, we study. Things that we don't want to get better at, we wing it. Most people wing life, and they have all the evidence to prove that they're winging life. Okay? What I'm saying is, if I want to learn how to fly a plane, I'm gonna kind of study somebody that knows how to fly planes. If I want to learn how to tend a garden, I'm going to find somebody that's a good gardener. If I want to go skiing, it would be nice to know that the person that's potentially going to teach me how to ski knows how to stand up on a pair of skis, right?
Right.
So if you look around and you see people in the world that seem to be functioning really well, and again, sometimes it's not always as real as it might appear to be, right?
Right.
But if you see people that look like they've kind of figured it out to some degree, why not just go on an adventure and kind of study them a little bit? It doesn't mean you're going to want to do everything they do or think like they think, but just kind of observe them, right? What are they doing? How are they doing that? Like one of the first things you asked me was, Kevin, what's your morning routine? That's a very intelligent question. Because it's like, okay, Kevin, what you're really saying to me is, Kevin, it appears to me that you've got certain things kind of nailed down well, which I may or may not. I don't claim to be an enlightened Buddha. But, if there's a simple routine that I'm doing on a daily basis, look at the principles behind that routine. My routine might be different than somebody else's, but it's all principle based, right? I understand that if I figure out a couple things that will lead towards success, then the principle is, number one, figure out what those things are. And then the principle number two is do it consistently, right? Over and over and over, and quit looking for a quick fix. That's another part of our society, right? Like you go into the bookstore, here's the 7 habits of blah, blah, blah. And we want to fix the mess that it took us 30 years to create. We want to go fix that mess in 30 days. That is a naive misunderstanding of how life works. If you're 300 pounds overweight and you think that you're going to clean up that situation in 30 days, you don't have a misunderstanding of nutrition. You have a misunderstanding of just how the human body works. Because I don't care how much you work out in 30 days, you ain't losing 300 pounds unless you start cutting off limbs, right? So what you need to do is you need to figure out who is where I'd like to be, whether that's in a financial realm, a health realm, spiritual realm, whatever that is. Who appears to be where I'd like to be, and I'm going to start studying them from a distance. And if you know them personally, well, then ask them questions. But if you study, like, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. What is Richard Branson doing? That might be somebody to study a little bit, right?
Sure.
Deepak Chopra looks like he's pretty blissed out most of the time. Okay, well, let's study Deepak Chopra. What's he doing, right? So it's not complicated. We have plenty of evidence all around us. We got this new thing called the internet. If you wanted to learn how to become a brain surgeon, you could type it into YouTube. You'd see a million videos on brain surgery. I don't know that I'd let you work on my brain before you go to medical school, but you could learn a lot just watching YouTube. So we tend to get good at what we sincerely want to get good at. So I guess in the closing, what I'd say is this. Invest a little bit of time figuring out what you really want out of life. And then once you kind of get that nailed down a little bit, why not find the people that appear to have it and then just kind of study them?
Great advice. Kevin, I know you're busy. Been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for being here with us and sharing your life with us. For those of you that are interested, you can connect with Kevin at kevinknebl.com. All of his links will be posted when this show airs under the article. Just go to the Facebook page for TLB TV and you'll be able to find this post. This is Rick Amerton with Rick on Life. Thanks for stopping by and being with us. And remember, whatever's going on in your life, sprinkle a little love on it.
Thanks, Rick.